We hope you enjoy this episode of the Modern Arizona podcast. But first, an important message for our listeners.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Arizona podcast. You may have noticed we recently changed our name from the Modern Divorce Podcast to the Modern Arizona Podcast. Recently, our topics have gotten broader than simply divorce and family law related into topics that all Arizona families, professionals, and individuals might care about. So in keeping with our expanded scope and what you, our listeners, want to listen to, we are now the Modern Arizona Podcast.
Hello, this is Billie Tarascio, owner of Modern Law. We are a family law firm in Phoenix, Arizona with offices throughout the state. We've got attorneys who can help you with every aspect of your family law case. We have a legal clinic run by students for those of you who need budget-friendly resources. And we've got lawyers who've been practicing for more than 20 years. Collectively, Modern Law has more than 200 years of attorney experience. So when you hire Modern Law, you're not just getting an attorney, you are getting a team. If you live in Arizona and you need representation, call us at Modern Law today. That's 480-649-2905, 480-649-2905, or visit us at mymodernlaw.com.
Hello and welcome to an episode of the Modern Arizona Podcast. I'm your host, Billie Tarascio, owner of Modern Law, family law attorney here in Arizona, joined by fellow family law attorney here at Modern Law in Tucson, Tracy Wood.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Tracy is a recent addition to Modern Law. She's not a new lawyer and brings in just a wealth of background and individual experience. We're so happy to welcome you to the team.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. It's a great firm. I love it.
Yay, I'm glad to hear that. That always makes
Yeah.
me happy. And I hope you're not just saying that.
No, I mean it. I don't really say anything I don't mean.
That's good, right? We love
Yeah.
that. We
Yeah,
love
exactly.
people who say what they mean. So you have a very unique background as a family law attorney. You are bringing a lot of other careers and a lot of other interests to the table. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I've been a lawyer for a long time. I graduated from law school back in 2008, but prior to that, I was a police officer. I was a Seattle police officer for 8 years, and I did that straight out of college, undergrad, and it really taught me a lot about life and people and how they interact, and it made me want to do things better, or work with people in a capacity to kind of smooth things over, because I've seen a lot of crisis and a lot of stuff that gets out of control, that doesn't have to had somebody intervened earlier. And so that's kind of been my life goal. I was a concierge at a hotel in Wyoming where I basically snowboarded and hiked every day that I wasn't working. And what I loved about that job is everybody who came to visit was just there for fun. And so I'd send them off on fun adventures, and then I'd, be doing my own thing. And that was living in a really small town in Wyoming and a tourist town also. So it was interesting. It was always interesting to see how those dynamics, affected pretty much everybody, and how I lived in that world. And then I was a stay-at-home parent for 8 years of stepchildren, which I did love. And also realized through that experience, I'm divorced now, how I kind of gave up myself. I gave up my career. I gave up a lot of things that I think a lot of people in divorce are facing, is that you do put aside a lot of yourself. And I had I just, did my own divorce, and I wasn't interested in any kind of conflict. And so therefore I left with nothing. And now looking back and seeing was that really the best idea for me? Because it kind of put me in a position that, left me struggling a little bit. And so after that, I did become a public defender, which again is just very interesting. People are in a real crisis, right? And it could be viewed as a crisis of their own making, but it's a whole lifetime of stuff that's led them up until that point. And so while there are some truly, truly bad actors out there, there are people that are they make poor decisions from what they know how to do. And that gave me a lot of compassion that I didn't have when I was a police officer. It added a different layer of compassion. And then I did personal injury, which for me was fascinating because I'd been hit by a car on my second day of law school, ended up with a broken collarbone, back and neck injuries, and then struggling for the first semester of law school, which you know how hard that is.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just insane. And I was having to have people carry my books for me, and they take my notes. I went to school as an older person who had never used a computer in school before. So I was like hand typing out my outlines. And then I found out you could like set it up on Word so that it automatically made an outline. Like I was always behind, right? So I was always struggling. And then the car accident didn't help because I was in, many like medical appointments during the week, and then everyone else would be studying, and I'd have to be going to, deal with the broken collarbone or my back or neck. So that also was really helpful. And seeing like people in personal injury, that can be one of the worst times of their life, and they've suddenly been in an accident. And people try and minimize that. Oh, they say that people are ambulance chasers, but really, just even to lose your car for a day, to lose work, to lose all of that. And so it just adds a whole layer of stress to people's lives that I really liked helping them with that and then negotiating on their behalf. And then I came to family law.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about your decision to be a stay-at-home parent to your stepchildren.
Mm-hmm.
So you were a lawyer. Your ex-wife, what was she?
She's a clinical psychologist. And when we first got together, she was not working in the home, but then later she was able to transition to that even before COVID, just because of the weather where we were living would make it difficult to drive in. But she was receiving child support from her ex-husband and then making her own salary. And it just made sense because I had moved to a different state, and with bar licensing, you can't just move state to state as an attorney. And so it's like, oh, this will be very much more difficult for me to get a job. And so I ended up being the one to be the primary driver and stay at home and making the breakfast and lunches and dinners and shopping. And I enjoyed a lot of it, but I did see myself become kind of overwhelmed and resentful a little bit. And it wasn't until later that I saw how I had to put myself back as far as like retirement and work and a resume, right? And fortunately, people like you have given me a chance to, I have that big gap, right? And I think a lot of our clients are probably facing that, is that you have spent a lot of time with your kids, which is a truly, truly valuable thing to do. But it is really hard. Like, I always say this, like, when I was a teenager, I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be so awesome when I'm an adult. It's going to be so fun and easy. And then it turns out it's actually really hard, and there's nobody there to save you but yourself. And I think, especially, I mean, it can be true for men, but particularly for women, you give a lot up to raise children. And it's very hard to like come back from that, or to figure out how to prioritize. And so for me, I loved being that parent, but I also, it had its difficulties.
Definitely. Definitely. So did you find, I'm just always interested in step parent dynamics because they're so complex. Did you find that you and your ex-wife ever had conflict about how to resolve a situation with the kids, and how did you navigate that?
Yes. Well, because they had two parents and two involved parents, although one parent lived out of the country, so they saw that parent 4 times a year, which created its own dynamics, right? When they would leave, it's like all the air came out of our lives, and then it was just the two of us. And she kind of really like, she's more of an introvert and kind of like settled down when they left, and I'm like, why? What are we doing? And
How do we get out?
let's do stuff, and then like I kind of would lose our purpose. And so when I was a step parent, the dynamics were such that they're her biological children. They have a father. I could like narc on them, but it wasn't my job to, impose punishment or penalty for certain things. And so, the kids and I had a wonderful relationship, and they very much respected me, but I wasn't their enforcer, and there were certain things that I think for her, the dynamic of them being in a same-sex relationship versus being an opposite-sex relationship, what she kind of expected and then what I expected, and then how do you co-parent with a mother? It's really hard. And I can see how if a person remarries, then you have a mother trying to be a stepmother not living with the mother and, don't take over my role. But in the home, I never had once thought of that. Two mother type figures in the same home. It's hard. It's
Is
really
it?
hard. Yeah, it's really hard.
Seems like it'd be amazing.
You'd think, but it depends on the people that are doing it, and whether they can understand each other, right?
Sure.
And so, no, sometimes the one person wants to be the only parent. They
Oh,
want the
right.
help, right? But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and we had my stepson's a competitive gymnast, so I spent a lot of time driving
Mhm.
to gymnastics and sitting there, and then competitive soccer player, and then you spend a lot of your life doing that. I don't know
Mhm.
how people do it when both people are working. Honestly, I
Right?
mean, you have to outsource, right?
Right. Right.
So I've seen a lot of that, and I do like I'm very good at like I guess empathizing and understanding because I've done so much. I've had so many different lives. I'm like, it's weird. Sometimes I look back at my life and I'm like, wow, that was me in my 20s. I was a cop, right? Then me in my 30s and 40s, I was a stay-at-home mother, and I'm a lawyer. And it's like how I've kind of moved around, but I see how complicated it is for people to come manage all those things at once, you
Right.
know?
Right. And because of all that experience, I think you're also a life coach, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've really found this specialty in this niche with very complex, difficult relationships and being someone's attorney when they have to navigate very difficult, complex relationships.
Right. Yeah, I have a client right now that there's an overlap with the opposing party having a criminal issue. And so I really understand what's happening there and how they can have that stuff can be, worked out or have an impact because I've done that work as well. So we think of, oh, I'm a family law attorney, or I'm a personal injury attorney, or I'm this kind of attorney, but really, other than, corporate work, like anything involving human beings,
Hmm.
it's going to have like it's going to bleed over into all different kinds of things that are happening, like
Absolutely.
you think of like I just was talking about life insurance policies. I've never really been that person because I didn't have my own kids. Like I didn't need to have a life insurance policy. And there's complications even with that and understanding. So it's like so many different pieces are coming together in family law, which is why I find it so compelling.
100% true. Absolutely. Especially also orders of protection. Orders of
Hmm.
protection come up all the time and they're like this quasi, it's like a hearing that's part criminal, part family.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
your background is just perfect for those.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting having been, when you're a police officer, you are enforcing the law, but you're never interpreting it or really applying it. It's quite interesting, right? And so it's kind of the same with those because the order of protection hearing is really it doesn't have a ton of law to it, right? It's like a compelling hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to know how to present that.
Mm-hmm.
And I that's the thing I find difficult and yet fascinating to try to put how do you get what you need to get in these different types of hearings or different types of law, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they each have their own everything is like the way I look at it, and this was actually in that show Making a Murderer. Have you ever seen that show? It's on
Yeah.
Netflix a couple of years ago. The
Yeah.
attorney who took his appeal said that really everything that you're doing in court is presenting a story.
Absolutely.
And you've got to have the pieces of the law, but really overarching what everything is how do you get what you need to get is by presenting your story and making it compelling with
Mm-hmm.
being factual, of course, and truthful
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
everything,
Absolutely.
you know.
You've spent a lot of time in the courtroom. I heard this through the grapevine at the firm that you had met with somebody and agreed to represent them like the following day,
Mhm.
which I absolutely love. But many attorneys are not comfortable doing it. So that tells me a lot about you and your instincts. Like you're brave, you're
Mhm.
fearless.
Well, you could say that. I
I
mean, I am sort of. I guess this is the thing. When I went to law school, it's terrifying, right? As you know, and you go in there, and I was much older than most of the people at law school, so it was a different situation for me. But they put you in a seating chart, they call your name. It's like, and then I thought, what the heck? I've already been people trying to kill me. Like, what does that matter? School. And that's the same thing. And that's what I try to, I've talked to several clients, so far in my short time here. And mostly it's about empower yourself, right? Don't rely on somebody else. I never rely on anybody for anything, not medical, not personal safety, not anything. I need to be totally informed. And so for me, no, nothing is going to freak me out.
Love that. Love that.
Because it's really just about, being able to advocate for yourself or for another person. And even if that, the one I probably took, I think it was to get the matter continued, and that's the thing, is like, there's always an option, right? I noticed this with friends getting divorced, and the kind of coaching that I was doing with those friends is like, no matter how educated they were, their brain, like as soon as a personal matter of, like something as big as a divorce or whatever came up, it's like their common sense went out the window. It's because your brain becomes overloaded.
It does.
And no longer can think.
Right. That happened to me. I went through a divorce.
Oh,
and there was a certain period of time when I was looking at an application and it asked for my address, and I could not recall my address because my brain was busy figuring out, where am I going to live? Like, how's this going to impact my kids? Like, we got a lease here. I need to trade in my car and get a bigger one. Like, all of the things are happening at once, and now my address is gone.
Right. And you think like, oh, I have to handle all of this at once, right? But there are ways to like slow it down, ask for continuous, absent like abuse or something like that. And that's what I think, like, to help clients also to be able to advocate for themselves, because the lawyer won't always be there. Yes, there are times when you must hire a lawyer. And I really think, a lot of people should. I say that as a lawyer, but because they aren't able to do that, but they can learn to do that. And they can learn, okay, when is it that I need this and when don't I? And to know how to get help, right? So I don't know, did you ask friends for help? I mean, when I went through my divorce, I asked for help, like from friends, because I don't want to be overreacting. I don't want to underreact, and like how to get those resources, I think is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just being gentle with yourself and understanding, like, I don't know, anybody going through a divorce feels like a failure, and you're second guessing all of your life choices. And then your brain is overloaded and you can't remember your address, or you're losing your driver's license, and like, you just feel like a failure.
Right.
But it's temporary, and you're not a failure. And it's really helpful to have professionals who get it and who can guide you through the steps slowly and just kind of encourage you to kind of slow down, take a step back.
Right. Put on the onus on somebody else. Okay, I'm going to hire a lawyer so that the legal part I don't have to stress about.
Exactly.
The lawyer and the paralegal can worry about that. And then I don't worry about missing a deadline or something like that. That's where I think professionals are so helpful, or therapy. And it's interesting you brought up failure, because I was going to say, like, I don't see, I'm the queen of breakups. And so I actually have a podcast and with a friend of mine, and that's why we started it, because we're like, well, let's learn from these breakups. We might as well get something good out of it. And one of the things that I've come to believe is those aren't failures. Like, this saying kind of bugs me, but everyone's in your life for a season, a reason, or whatever. I'm like one of those people. I'm very good friends with most of my exes, and like, I like to keep people around because it's important to me. That's not always possible, but it's not a failure unless you don't learn from it.
This is Billie Tarascio, owner of Win Without Law School and Modern Law. Win Without Law School is a program that operates nationally and helps people who are representing themselves or who just need more help. If you are in a family court case and you're feeling confused, you need direction, you need help figuring out questions to procedural or strategic issues, Win Without Law School can help. At Win Without Law School, you've got two experienced attorneys, me and my partner Julie LeBenz, who can guide you through the court process and help you troubleshoot your case. You've got access to courses, planners, checklists, and live Q&A. Our live Q&A is where you can get help from us and your community. We also have a closed Facebook group just for members where you all can share your experience, share your pleadings, get advice, and mentorship. Join us today at winwithoutlawschool.com. That's winwithoutlawschool.com.
For me, that's why we started this podcast, was to talk about our relationship. What did we do in these relationships? What happened? We're on to like 7 seasons now. And it's so helpful because divorce isn't a failure. A breakup isn't a failure. Like sometimes just people aren't meant to be together, or you have a desire for something, I have a desire for something. It doesn't make either yours or my desire wrong, but they may not be compatible. And it's, we kind of grow up with this belief that we're going to be with our forever person. And oh my God, you're a loser if you're not. But that's really not the world we live in, And there are so many different ways to have a family. And that's what I really like. It's like, okay, well, now we're transitioning. So let's figure out the best way we can all go forward,
Mm-hmm.
So I like to take high conflict and turn it into low conflict.
And have you found a lot of success in doing that?
Yes. And I was a mediator before. So yes. And that's what I would tell people when they came to the table, is like, you're not going to get everything you want here, but everything is voluntary, and you're going to walk out signing only when you want to sign. And that, okay, this is my best case scenario, and going in front of a judge isn't always your best case scenario. So if you can come to the table together, and maybe you just don't hate each other. Maybe don't want to talk to each other for a while or whatever, but the hate, like I just would like people to let go of that, the anger, because it just eats them up, right?
For sure.
And
So
makes
how
everything.
long were you a life coach?
I don't know if I would ever say that I was like worked as one, but I've done it so much for my friends. And then my I had my own coach. She's like, all you need to do is put up a website, or all you need to do is put up that. But you're the business person, not me. I just like to do the nitty gritty work. And so like, I've been doing it for years, but only just for no pay, and I just enjoy it. I'm the person in people's lives that they come to like help move through the problems, death, breakup, whatever. But I'm also the person that when that stuff happens to me, I immediately get the help that I need, therapy, coach, friends.
Yeah,
I really believe in support systems.
absolutely. Part of gathering your resources, if you're going through divorce or family law, certainly one of those things is money. That's the most obvious resource. But then you got your team, bench, like your bench of people who can be there for you to help with your kids, help you move, help pack, help make decisions, help organize information, like whatever it is. So I think that is great advice. And if people are looking at going through a divorce, just figuring out what are my resources and who can be my people. And your lawyer's one of those people.
Right. Yeah. And to know that, I think that's people often want to do everything on their own, or they're going to be, they're ashamed to ask for help, or they feel certain that they're not good enough. But we can't be all things, right? We have to always seek help from others. I mean, I will diagnose myself, via, whatever, the internet, until I decide, okay, well, now I need a test, or I need to figure out what's going on. Right. And so I think that's the thing, is like, make yourself aware, educate yourself, and then always have the people who are the experts, or the people who just, are going to support you and be there for you to go out and say, okay, I just need to talk or something, for whatever. I mean, that's the thing with the coaching kind of stuff. People get mad at you, they're in such a state of like anger, and it has to go somewhere. I had a friend whose mother recently passed away, a very, very close friend. And I was the only person she could take her anger out on, And so then I had to like take it and then kind of like step back. But then now that's been a series, bunch of time has passed, and now we just laugh every time. And so like that anger dissipated, but had I reacted, right, that would have been worse. So you just kind of need to know your role and know who are those people in your life where you can, you don't have to get angry at your friends, but go to a rage room with your friends. I did that too after a breakup. My favorite thing was hitting the glass bottles, the wine bottles with a bat or like a metal rod. that stuff. Like people can help you through that because people, I think, forget you have to go through all of your emotions. It's okay, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
I wanted to ask you, what do you do for, oh, no, I want to ask you what your work style is. Some lawyers are very good about, I start at this time, I end at this time.
oh my God, you're the boss. I can't answer this question.
You
I'm like,
can,
bing, bing, bing,
because
bong.
any of them are fine
Mhm.
with me. I don't have a preference. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
I don't work like that personally, but I think it's important for clients to know what their lawyer's work style is because sometimes it makes sense to match those work styles. So, how would you describe your work style?
I'm like available all the time, which is terrible to say, but I am. Like I work weekends, I do whatever. I was working this weekend. I'm very responsive. I'm that person that always has my phone on me, will always look at it, will always answer. And yet, if it's not a scheduled thing, then I might like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna put in my laundry or do this or do that. So I kind of being around, and that's the thing, like I try now to, okay, get all my exercising done in the morning and then be available during the day, but also like I will make appointments what are considered traditional after hours because I know like people are working, right?
Right.
I have that flexibility.
Yeah.
And I'm
Sounds
not
like you're just very
stuck, right?
flexible. Like you do what
Yeah.
works. But how do
Yes.
you protect your peace and your sanity and your capacity when you're always available?
Well, I feel like because I play pickleball and now I'm like restricted because this heat, just extreme heat, but
Yeah.
play pickleball, hike. I have dogs. I like have so many friends. So I'm always like talking on the phone or I'm like out exercising. For me, I mean, I've lived around the world and I don't know if you know, I've done some genocide work and stuff like that. And so having been a police officer and doing that kind of work, I just feel grateful and, I have the greatest life on earth. I have a better life than 90% of the people on this planet. And so I'm just grateful. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to this firm. I'm grateful to the fact that I have a home to live in and that for me, it's okay to be available because it's my passion anyway, like to help people. So,
I-
I can do both. I can be available and, I always make time for myself, I'm
Yeah.
a big into binging TV and crime shows.
Oh yeah. What's
So-
your favorite current crime show that you're binging?
Oh my God. I just binged those podcasts, but the true crime, worst roommate ever.
Oh, I saw that on Netflix last night. I haven't watched it yet. Is it
Oh,
good?
you need to binge the whole series.
Worth
Yeah.
watching?
Oh
Love
yes,
it.
everyone on earth should watch that.
Love it. Love it. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
here today. It was a great time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you were anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.